This is my Learning Disabilities reading PowerPoint. Struggling readers. What are some facts of them? 1 in 5 students are likely to have trouble learning to read. 80% of students who are identified for special education will have deficits in their reading. There are many tools available to diagnose these children at age 5. Trouble with reading in the future. So the child talked late or had delayed speech at age 2. This is a primary warning sign. They have a limited vocabulary that does not match that of their peers. They cannot rhyme, and they are difficult to understand when they speak. The Balanced Literacy Program, it should include the following steps. There are 14 of them. You should be reading to the children, shared book and writing experiences, mnemonic awareness training, vocabulary development, silent reading, models, and many opportunities. Mnemonic awareness, what is it? It is the understanding that spoken words and syllables are made up of sequences of speech, sounds, and that it's possible to tease out or isolate these sounds in order to assist oneself in spelling and writing. Teaching reading to LD students. There are 8 steps that were given in the book, so you want to convince the child that you can teach them to read. That is the most important. It goes on to say you want to determine what the child doesn't know, give them a test, determine whether they can blend sounds, listen to the child, and then you want to analyze your data and make a plan to set some goals. So word walls, what are they? They're a visual aid. They're a motivator for students. The words included are ones that, The ones included are ones that they may learn in various reading/spelling settings. They serve as a reminder for words they do know and will eventually memorize, if not already. And they are most beneficial if they are a daily review. Word families and word clumps. What are those? They are groups of words that have a common feature or pattern. An example in the book was the AD, so bad and dad and had, mad and sad. Work with an emerging reader. These are students who have been through months of phonics and spelling instruction, whether that be individually or in a whole group setting. To become a proficient reader, you must read to the student every day. It needs to be about 30 minutes, if not more, and you want to introduce different concepts, such as the silent E. After reading a small beginning portion of the paragraph and looking at a picture referring to the reading, the student will be able to continue the writing of the short story based off of the picture. So in my placement class, one of the things I did was the kids looked at a picture, and there were a few beginning sentences of a short story or a paragraph based on that picture. And they wanted the student to continue to read or write their own continuation of that short story. So they need to be able to infer or make assumptions based on the picture. So I showed them the picture and asked them to describe to me what they thought was going on. And this is teaching them to create their own versions of the story, and so that they can see or think what they want that is going on in the picture. They're able to write a full paragraph, sentence structure, and they will read their stories as a whole group and see the variation in them. So learning disabilities, the written expression. Writing, spelling, and speaking. Spelling, the ability to create words that are grammatically correct, but is often used to judge a student's writing ability. Spelling and expressing one's ideas in print are often 2 different processes. The complexities of spelling are taught after handwriting and penmanship. Ways to assist students with spelling. So spelling can be introduced to students as soon as a student can recognize 15 basic letters of the alphabet. That would be B, C, D, F, G, H, L, M, N, P, R, S, T, W, and the following vowels of A, O, and U. You want your students to have their own word dictionaries, and spelling activities need to be a daily focus. There are many different methods for spelling. So you could say the word, have the students repeat the word, spell the word, THD spells the, ask the student to repeat what you said, have students watch your mouth, have students repeat the phrase, have students write the word 3 times as they say the letters, remove visual and auditory distractions, so you would have them close their eyes and ears and say the letters to spell the word. it says that on the following days, you want to repeat the previous word and add a new word each day along with it. So how to teach handwriting. You want to make sure that your student is able to fluently read and print before they can move on to cursive. So when teaching letters and letter recognition, emphasize the basic shape of a printed letter and then introduce different styles of representing letters. A good point that was said in the book was that you could have your students practice typing on the computer, and it's allowed them to see words that they make in another way. So mechanics of writing for older LD students. Students need to first be taught or reminded on how to analyze a sentence. So they should be taught how to recognize how a sentence is structured. Some things that could be taught or touched up on would be sentence fragments, grammar in a sentence, paragraph structure. So one of the lessons that was used in my placement room was the objective after the spelling of an individual word lesson. The students will be able to have the word memorized or know where the resource for that word is and can go to the word if they need to refer back to it. So I incorporated both my previous placement and this current placement. They did something called a red word lesson. So you give the student the word, you show them what it is. You could say something like, oh, it's used in your everyday speaking. I'm sure you've seen it in your books many times. So they see it, they guess what it is. So for example, the. They write the word in their best printing, and then they write it 3 times. They flip over the page, write the word without looking at it, and then they tap it out on their arms. So they would say T-H-E spells the, and they would do that multiple times. Then they would flip it over and write it on the page without looking. They would write 3 sentences that use the word, and as they were writing the sentences, they would pound out the syllables. So, I go to the store. So they would pound out, I go to the store. That has 5 syllables in it. So they would do that for 3 sentences, and then this word would be put up on the wall for them to refer back to whenever they needed. Uh-oh, what happened? So learning disabilities, mathematics. The lack of readiness in a student. The younger students come into school with a varying degree of readiness to learn their math. So different students are at different levels. Children who may not be ahead of the game didn't have the benefit of being in preschool, or there are an assortment of kids who are just plain not ready to learn. Visual perceptual deficits. So visual perceptual deficits are referring to the cognitive skills that allow us to process and interpret meaning from the visual information that we gain from our eyesight. So some examples are a student has difficulty when writing their numbers. They will often reverse them, and this student may not see 4 separate lines that actually form the square itself. Poor spatial sense and poor memory. Poor spatial sense is when a student may have the difficulty with concepts such as over and under or more and less. Poor memory is in those students who frequently do not become automatic in memorization of facts, and we see them needing to count with their fingers or make slash marks, even as adults. What is the purpose of an assessment? An assessment is given to the students to do exactly what it says in their name, assess the student on their level of learning. With the assessments, they can serve as a pre or a post for the lessons that will be taught or have been taught to the student. So there are 3 different levels of understanding: concrete, representational, and abstract. The levels of learning are always in the order of concrete, then representational, and then finally abstract. Concrete is there may not be any understanding unless they have spent numerous hours manipulating physical things or pieces of the problem. Representational is students look at symbols or pictures and understand how to do the necessary problem. And then abstract is the student understands the problem so well that it can be done in their head. So lesson in my math class was after a full couple weeks of teaching the math lesson on multiplication, the student will be able to have the facts 1 through 10 memorized. They will also be able to recite the facts back to the teacher or to another student. So one of the things my placement teacher did in her resource room was have the students break physical items into clumps. Having the physical thing to look at made it easier for the student to separate. For example, 6 times 2 equals 12 because they made 2 groups of 6 or 6 groups of 2. And they would also study math facts together in partner form and then do it with the teacher as well. And